I'll first start with Laura has been a godsend in my world, and you have been a fantastic translator between what we just learned about in the last half an hour and my world. And yes, we have one of the experts here in the room, and so pleased. But I will note my title's not that cool. My title is a few levels down in the org, but okay. No, that's fine. So first, I wanted to say I'm essentially new here. This is my first time coming in person, and I wore a fancy new shirt for it, so hope you like it. Alrighty. Before I get into this, I actually want to ask a question from everyone. And who has actually heard of RRCoP maybe before yesterday? Oh my gosh. I'm actually really impressed on that. That's fantastic. So as we saw yesterday, Trusted CI is expanded to support regulated research now, and this is going to be fantastic moving forward, bringing these together. This comes through leveraging RRCoP. But what we were sort of noticing was things have really changed over time. And once upon a time, we could ask our researchers to essentially be the one responsible for their compliance. They would be the one signing off that they met these 10 controls, and we all moved along and we were happy. Turns out now we are moving forward with a lot more complex situations. The standalone labs, they were able to use their own infrastructure. These days, everyone's connected to everything. We have shared infrastructure. We're collaborating with people around the world. And it's not quite as simple as it once was. In walks RRCoP. And the reason we formed was essentially because we were essentially looking for where conversations were happening outside of conferences. I mean, we were able to pack rooms once upon a day of people eager to hear, oh my gosh, you're handling CUI, that's so cool. And then it became something we were all kind of doing, and we needed a venue to talk. But we also were far behind because none of us were really staffed enough to handle all the things or have a Laura on staff to tell you, were you doing things right? Were you doing things wrong? And we needed to look out to our peers around the country to start answering some of these questions. So I just updated this morning. We're now up to 330 institutions from around the world. Obviously, most of them are US-based. The difference in the colors were my advisory boards or leadership, but we still got 330. And as you can see, regulatedresearch.org. People have somewhat asked how we kind of got to where we got in the making of the community we built. And I really think that's about like stepping through the steps of first we recognized we weren't talking to each other and we weren't sharing best practices, we were building our own. People were getting trapped in their own places of this is what I know and I didn't have peers to talk to. So you get sort of in this single mindset that this is how we're going to accomplish it. So next up was we built the community, and the NSF helped with that. So about three and a half years ago, we got this NSF award to bring this community together. And it's grown tremendously since then. But our next step was really learning from each other. And how do you get there? What have you done that's worked? What have you done that didn't work? Both are good stories. But once you've done that, you can start actually realizing we have a collective voice. And amongst us, we're now able to see, hey, we're all experiencing challenges in certain ways. And that became a really powerful piece once we reached that tipping point where once we could start saying, this isn't just a me thing, this is an us thing. I think that became really powerful. And so recently we've really gotten to the place between 4 and 5 where we've now found this voice, but now what do we do with this collective voice? One of the powerful parts about RRCoP that is actually a little bit different from Trusted CI has been we are bringing anyone into this equation. We are the entire workflow of your contracts office, your government relations people, all the way through your cyber operators. So yeah, endpoints, all of that becomes part of our fun, and we aren't going to deny someone because, let's say, you're in the export control office. In fact, those are some of my friends because they're not me. What we also realized that we were doing was we were bringing together communities that might not speak often. And so probably each of these are communities in the space, and each of these are usually meeting at whatever frequency they are, and they're talking about very similar things. You're going to hear, so let's see, AU ECHO is the American Association of Export Control Officers. And they are truly having meetings very similar to this, where they're like, oh my gosh, did you see that this new CUI regulation is coming in place? Oh my gosh, how do we deal with this? And we're starting to realize that this type of infrastructure of the community of communities needed some form of glue to keep talking about the same topics and be able to share from different standpoints that people wouldn't normally be in. So as mentioned yesterday, one of the ways that we've done this is we have our monthly webinars, second Wednesday of the month, and if those of you who are good at math can recognize that is today. So in fact, in about a couple hours, I'm hosting our webinar today on CISA and what they can do for higher ed. There's a lot of great free stuff, but we've generally been having about 130 to maybe 160 people show up every month for the live version. We have every one of them recorded, and people have found that this has become a really great repository for just essentially, I didn't know I needed this until today, and oh wait, you recorded this 6 months ago. Here you go. So we're starting to figure out how to move this forward. We've pulled together a webinar leads team, and the community is starting to breathe life into how to push this forward, and it takes away, I don't know, me being the one orchestrating some of these things. So I'm really liking seeing where it's going with other people involved. I think one of the understated ones that we've pulled together has been the power of some of our workshops we've put on. And to me, workshops have never been a rinse and repeat, but we do offer that type of thing. We offer the training, and that's an important one. But something that's always like thrilled me is kind of what does the community most need right now, and how do we move that forward? And so this sort of began, so this first column was actually before the birth of RRCoP, or the realization that we really needed it. And during COVID, we all sort of pivoted to what would this look like if this group started talking about what challenges are you seeing with supporting this type of environment? And we pulled a lot of people together. I think we were around 115 people, 150 maybe, I don't know, close to that range, during the pandemic. And we started realizing that people weren't that different between their biomedical systems that they were supporting, their Department of Defense ones, but they're all realizing that they lacked peers. And in order to do that, so we produced, it's 2021, and it was the community perspective of regulated research. And it's a great document. I still go back to it all the time, but it's probably the closest thing we have to a framework. And okay, so now we have great opportunities in this space, but we do have something. So it's a really powerful one to start with. But then the next one became, we started realizing that system security plans were typically only seen by the group of people who had ever worked on it in the small team in their institution. And the problem that exists there is, well, you have no idea if you're being way too verbose. Are you talking about your vacation policy? And then there's other sides of maybe you just answer it by repeating the control and say, yeah, we do that. So what we did there was we gathered at one of the EDUCAUSE security professional conferences. It's not named that anymore, but it is always to me. And I think that one we brought about 65 people together, and we spent one day where you and your table mates were able to handle about 6 controls and debated heavily throughout the day. But what we produced there was, we produced a document that had 43 of the 110 controls filled out to some level of what we thought was, from the group, acceptable. And the true power in that was it was probably a week later that NIST was in a public conversation, and they said, yes, that is the most requested resource, and we will not be providing it because you all are different. We're like, well, yeah, we are, but you got to start somewhere. So this one's a publicly available document, and we've had lots of downloads from it, but it really helps you understand where you fit in your interpretation of it. And the final one has been the most recent one. So as I said, I'm not a rinse and repeat kind of person. So EDUCAUSE said, oh my gosh, that was really, really, really popular. Do it again. I'm like, I want to. So I paired up with Laura and 3 other assessors, and I was just the presenter. I'm not the cool assessor. But we brought in these 4 assessors for another full-day conference, or full-day workshop, where we spent about 60% of the time with presentation mode, and about 40% of the time, any question goes. We are not tracking who you were, who you're asking questions from, because sometimes that's scary too. So if you want to raise your hand and say, yeah, I've never heard of firewalls, you don't want to do that in front of the assessor. But this gave you the option to ask these types of questions to people who could really help you in this space. And what we produced on that one was we produced a document that was pretty much the workshop report of some of the best practices, what they had seen, and I think that was a really powerful day. I also was pleased that we filled up immediately, and we were able to open the doors to anyone on the wait list too for that one. And so both of those have been at the EDUCAUSE security conference. It's been a good venue. They've accepted us into their fold. So who knows? One of the interesting ones, though, is how rapid this growth has been. And it turns out I'm not the only one out there wondering, where are we talking beyond conferences anymore? We're growing really quickly. So our Slack group, as mentioned yesterday, we're chatty, but we're not chatty bad. And we've managed to stay on topic for about, I don't know, 6 years now. And it's constantly growing, but it's still a free site. So you do lose your data. That has good and bad parts to it. I don't want to be held to things I assumed about a regulation a few years ago. And on the plus side, it gives new people a venue where you don't feel weird asking a question that might be so basic because, well, you know, it doesn't exist in the history. I also was showing off some of the history with the, well, not 320 anymore, but of the population, we kind of have about 75% of my institutions that are closer to like the R1s, R2, and doctoral ones. But we also have the other 25%, which has fascinated me, and that one is masters, international, And we have about 7% of the population as community colleges. And while that's a little bit surprising, they find us with CUI, they find us with 800-171, and they find the financial aid, they find us for maybe an SSP, things like that. Now that we've actually started learning from each other and recognizing the impact of what happens when we speak together, we're starting to work more toward the advocate, negotiate goal. And that is also, that is reaching out with our partners. It's often been EDUCAUSE, but like COGR is a big one. There's a few groups that do support for higher ed and advocacy of how to get these things out there. They have some better connections than I ever want. And so on that, yeah, we've done a lot of those call for comments groups. I participated in a few of them, and I think there's great work happening in that space, but it's just nice to know that someone's speaking up on your behalf. Here's a great resource sheet. It's boring. I think this is a big one. So this one has been, I've been kind of chewing on this slide for, I don't know, last 4 months or so. And I think it's a really powerful recognition that the landscape really has changed, and I don't think many of us have taken that into consideration. And so this also makes sense with the timing of Trusted CI and RRCoP too, in my opinion. So right now, compliance is now required at the institutional level. Like, you can't get around that. It's now a shared responsibility between the research labs and the institution. My next big point is fundamental research needs basic cybersecurity protections, and it may soon require compliance. And that's coming with NSPM 33. That's coming from various researchers who are like, hey, I do fundamental research. That means I could do whatever I want. No. And I also think that there's some blurred lines between basic cybersecurity, trusted CI, and regulated research. It's not quite one or the other anymore. We're all in the same place. And it's that shared infrastructure that has really pushed that forward. We've seen this. How we doing it? Continuing doing what we're doing, make some tools, but we're also building into some of the trusted CI activities, and we are finding ways to not force it, but there's a lot of opportunities within that space. I mentioned the framework. I've got my eye on that. More participation here, but we'll start tackling it. This is the pretty polished version of my goals for the next 5 years. RRCoP wants to pretty much continue being a resource for these tools. Number 2 goal is the awareness, advocacy, and alignment, but alignment with other communities that might be talking about similar things. The awareness is, I would love to see more interest from all of the leadership on what's really impacted when we say something like dbGaP is coming into our space with 800-171. I think something like that needs to move beyond rooms like this. And then the third one is truly improving the maturity of this little group called RRCoP. I mean, we now have such a large platform with this reputation and the reach with Trusted CI. So I'm really grateful to have amazing peers alongside for the journey. And here's the fantastic, if you want to find the Slack group, here you go. Here's our resource sheet. And in addition to find us at the workshops and the various locations that we're meeting, I don't know, find me for stickers, join for the webinar later if you want to. It's virtual, it's fine. I don't know, any questions? Got 10 minutes.
Hi, Don DeRusso with Michigan State University. For a few of us that have started moving in this direction, will RRCoP be in a position to maybe do a friendly pre-assessment before we actually go out and pay someone to do a pre-assessment to help us understand if we're at that 85% done level?
My answer to that is definitely was on my list of wants and interests around planning what the next 5 years could look like. I will also say that the drawback has been that is an incredibly pricey endeavor for one institution. So I'm not taking it off the table. What I would love to see crafted from that is how do we either share this type of assessment, because yes, that is a service we should be doing and need to be working toward. And I think my biggest priority there is how to make sure that this is not one institution that gets to benefit from this, but how to, like one strategy that I've been working with a vendor is they want to provide help to us, and I got to craft this ask, but their ask to us was, or my ask to them was, could you start vetting if we gave you a write-up of here is how we would handle various things? Could you vet some of our implementation strategies? And so I do see ways that we can start hitting that without, let me give you that pre-assessment. So we can get you close, but we also want to be sharing this way out from just one institution. And so we do get with the privacy issues there too, because I also don't want to be like, here you go. This is exactly what they've got going on. So a little bit of fuzzy, I want to, and let's figure out how to craft it correctly.
Got a couple minutes, right? Any other questions for Carolyn?
Hi, great to see and hear about RRCoP again.
In person.
Yes. So Laura kind of hinted at this, and then you did as well. Can you say more about, you said sort of she talked about the need to respond to the call for comments when all these rules are posted, and you mentioned something about the comment group. So can you say a little bit more about how RRCoP has pulled people together and the kinds of things you've commented on?
I think one of the biggest ones that really felt impactful, and I mean, we have yet to learn how much we were listened to, but the very top one where that's EDUCAUSE. I can't rattle them all off. I know COGR is Council on Government Relations, APLU, yeah. But it turns out that that's a huge swath of people who are willing to speak up on our interests. And what we did in this one was we paired up with, no, that one wasn't the AU ECHO and COGR. So that one, we did gather for a bit. Jared Cummings is the wizard behind the scenes, where he brought us together, and we all had various ideas that we wanted to see of what was change worthy in this new, this is what CMMC is going to look like in the future. And I am pretty proud of that. But what's the really impactful part is, okay, whether they have accommodated our interests or not, the next step was, I'm the co-chair of the Academic Advisory Council for Cyber AB. CMMC, I don't know, it's in the whole ecosystem, but essentially this is the group of people who are advocating on behalf of higher ed for CMMC. And what was interesting there was that group did not submit any comments on their own. And when I came to the next meeting and I said, here's something I worked with EDUCAUSE on, and it really speaks from our community. All the heads were nodding the whole time. Like I brought up the points that we wanted a longer time for POAMs because we didn't think that you could truly accomplish all of this in 6 months. We wanted a year. I don't remember exactly the 5, 6 requests, but oh, we did. We asked for higher ed specific industry knowledge assessors because we didn't think that getting assessed by someone who does the Deloittes all day long knew exactly how higher ed was working. All right, well, I think that one was left on the floor, but that hasn't changed. Like now I have people approaching me on what could we do in that space. And I'm now speaking to people who have the power to create something like that. So maybe it's not about did all of our asks or demands get made, but it is coming together. And now that we have that voice, here is what we're seeing. And I've also said that, like, if I were put in front of the Department of Defense CIO tomorrow, I don't know if I could actually summarize why is this funky for higher ed, but I have a few things to come from. But if I had that scheduled in a month, I bet I could jockey these groups of people, and we could actually have a pretty strong statement. So I don't have that platform, but seeking it. Huh?
Hi, just a quick question. So I attended EDUCAUSE Cybersecurity Privacy Professionals Conference this year, and I attended a day with CMMC assessors. So that was awesome. Thank you so much. My question is, I'm hearing this challenge of a nationwide limited number of CMMC certified assessors. Do you have any insights on that area or any updates? That would be appreciated. Thank you.
The AAC, the Academic Advisory Council, keeps telling us that this isn't as big of an issue as we think it is. I agree more with you that I think it is a big issue, and I think it's going to end up showing itself in terms of maybe more missed deadlines. I mean, CMMC has not been on the fast track. So I have a feeling that at some point, the amount of contracts and work that needs to be done versus the amount of available recipients of this money, I don't think that there's going to be a connection there. And there's probably tea leaves are saying maybe we kick it down the road a little bit until we can supply for the community. But I think it's a dangerous window too, because they're also adding new features and timeline inflating components to what it takes to be an assessor. And the harder you make it, the smaller the community is going to get. And then you also end up with, you can charge whatever you want as one because your time is now gold. So I'm hoping for leeway. All right, we're at 55 seconds.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you.